Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So nice to see everybody here today. And today we have some old friends and some new friends too. And so nowadays in the West, meditation is becoming kind of more popular. You know, it's kind of this ancient thing from India, from pretty much many places. I think have had meditation in their cultures, but largely, at least throughout the Western world, through most places, India is kind of the fountainhead for a lot of the meditative traditions that spread throughout the world. And this word meditation is actually a Western word. This kind of meditation actually comes from the Catholic tradition. And my understanding is they would kind of do visualizations of kind of like Jesus on the road, or perhaps things like this. And the word they used for this type of prayer was meditation. In Pāli, the word for meditation is actually bhavana, so it has a different meaning. So bhavana, the word bhava, actually means becoming or being. Kind of, so it's this idea that people aren't just a set personality, but all the various aspects of a person's physical form, of their mental qualities. These are all things that are changing. And they're things that we become. Kind of our form is something that's changing. It's constantly something that we become. Our mind is something that's changing. It's constantly something we become. These are kind of activities that we take on rather than something that's set in stone. And so the Pāli word for meditation is actually bhavana. And so what this is, it means kind of developing. So you take on a deliberate state of being or becoming in order to become something. Yeah? And so the basic idea behind this is that there are kind of skillful states that people become, and there are also unskillful states that people become. You can become something good, become something bad. And this happens on a kind of moment-to-moment level. You kind of become somebody who's paying attention, become somebody who's distracted, become somebody who's hungry, become somebody who's sleepy. You know, whatever it is happens very quickly. And it also happens on a kind of longer-term scale. You kind of become somebody who's a high school graduate, become somebody who's a college graduate, you know, become somebody who's an accountant or a carpenter, whatever it is. These are all states of becoming that we take on through an accumulated set of actions. And all these various states of becoming that we take on, they have this element to them, this element of grasping onto something and then developing it, holding on to it and developing it. And so the real question behind these states of becoming is, are they things that lead me to happiness, or are they things that lead me to suffering? Oftentimes, kind of the states of becoming that people that we can take on, they're kind of unconscious, right? And the fact that they're unconscious is sometimes made more powerful by this idea that we are this state of becoming. We are the accountant. We are the lawyer. We are the high school graduate. We are the university graduate. We are Canadians. We are these things. And of course, there is a truth to this, right? Kind of go through the airport. I'm a Canadian. Can't just be like, sorry, passport officer. I'm not trying to take on any states of becoming. I don't have my passport. He's not going to listen to that, right? It's like, well, okay, well, what nationality are you, right? There is this kind of truth to that. There is a kind of, these states can last for a while. But the tricky thing about them is they also change. Yeah? Actually, you can give up your Canadian citizenship and no longer become Canadian. If you reside in another country that allows you to take their citizenship, then you can do that. You can start, when people become kind of university graduates, some people feel like, yeah, I'm a university graduate, I've got it going on. Of course, they have that diploma on their wall for a while. But then this feeling of prestige that a person gets with this university graduation can fade. Actually, the curriculums in universities can change, and eventually people find their university degrees, these states of becoming, change with them. I'm no longer this kind of university graduate that I was. States of becoming with our body can change. Actually, I remember seeing friends, some of these friends that we used to have, when we were little kids. We grow up, we see them on the street, we might not recognize them at first, if it's been 20, 30 years. Their faces change. They've become something different, So with all these states of becoming that happen, what we're really looking for is a way to become something that leads us to a longer-term happiness. And this is why this word bhavana, this word development. So oftentimes meditation, the most basic form of meditation that gets taught is this meditation on the breath, just watching the breath as it goes in, watching the breath as it goes out, and then learning about the various ways that the body, they call, fabricates the breath. This is a word that's in Pāli, it's called sankhara. This word means things that get put together. We put them together. So the breath is actually one of the only processes in the body, one of the few, that is both automatic and conscious. We can control our breath, but it's also an automatic process. So this is a really important process because this gives us an idea about the effects that happen when we take on particular states of becoming. We can see for ourselves the way, when we learn to pay attention, we can see for ourselves the way that our breath changes in way X, the way that our breath changes in way Y. And this is one of the important things about bhavana. One of the important things about taking on states of becoming is there's both a cause to the state of becoming, and the state of becoming is the effect. There's a kind of cause and effect relationship to this. And this is the way that it actually works for most types of skills that are really important. There is something we can develop because there's a pattern to them. Actually, most of the scientific knowledge that we have in the West today is based on this kind of idea. There's a kind of cause and effects to things. And we learn to manipulate the cause in an appropriate way, then we can get the desired effect. This is the reason, through very complex ideas about these things, why we kind of turn on a car and the engine starts and we can drive down the highway. And we kind of get on a plane and the pilot gets it going and flies through the air. Actually, I hear they're planning to come out with some low-flying planes now, almost like Back to the Future when I was a kid, and kind of fly just above the ground. In any event, all these things are based on understanding the principles of causes and effect. And so this is the same kind of thing that we're trying to understand in our bhavana, in our practice of development, as word meditation, in our practice of developing wholesome qualities, in our practice of eliminating unwholesome ones. What is the cause that when we put it into effect leads us to long-term happiness? What are the causes that when we put them into effect lead us to long-term pain? What are the causes when we put them into effect that lead us to short-term happiness? What are the causes when we put them into effect lead us to short-term pain? When we learn to kind of understand these kind of things, we develop a skill in bhavana. We develop a skill in taking on states of becoming. As we were just talking about, these states of becoming, they're for the purpose of becoming a happier and more peaceful person. But in developing these skills, what we end up learning is, okay, there's a lot of different causes and effects that come into play to either make me happy or unhappy. There's a lot of different causes and effects that come into play that make me peaceful or agitated. These things have many different things to them. And this is why we end up with many different topics of meditation. And the other interesting thing is that people have different characters. As we mentioned, they've already been taking on states of becoming prior to meditating. So although we're all kind of sitting in this room together, all of us have a different experience of the room. For some people, the room might be too cold, For other people, it might be too hot. And for some people, they might have come into the meditation hall and felt a sense of peace. For other people, they might have come into the meditation hall and felt something totally different. In other words, we all bring our previous states of becoming, our personalities, our degrees, our jobs, whatever we've accumulated as this kind of sense of self, that comes into the hall with us and stays with us when we close our eyes. So what that means is we all have a different setup to these states of becoming. And because we all have all these different personalities, there are some topics of meditation that resonate with some people better than others. A good all-around general one is the breath. That's a very good one to start with. But then as a person keeps meditating, they start to learn, okay, I'm a person who tends to get pulled off a lot by, say, anger, And when I'm meditating with the breath, that's okay. But maybe this other topic, metta, seems to really hit the spot. My mind really calms down more when I do this topic of meditation. In that case, that's an appropriate topic for that person to cultivate. That's a cause and effect relationship that they learn about by playing with taking on wholesome states. As they practice this more and more, they start to learn subtle ways that their mind tries to pull them off into anger. Become more aware of it, and they start to develop more techniques to counter it. So I remember when I was young, my mother, who was here, she used to take me to Taekwondo. I used to like doing martial arts, and did that for many years. And when you first start doing martial arts, one of the first things they teach you is how to do a kind of form. So you're a kid and you step in there, you're like, when am I going to do a triple, I want to be like a ninja. You watch all these ninja movies, come into your first Taekwondo class ready to do a split kick, straight above your head. And then you go there and okay, first thing you learn is this form, And these forms are very set patterns of movements. You block like this, way up in the air, and then you go like this, and you step forward, and you punch, and you have to rotate your hips and your body in a particular way. And you just keep doing that over and over again for a long period of time. And they teach you these kind of techniques on how to punch. There's particular ways you move your hips before. Your hand should rotate in this way. It should hit with these kind of two knuckles. And the person just watches your technique over and over again. And so you're sitting there as this kid kind of practicing Taekwondo, and you're waiting when am I going to get the chance to spar? When am I going to get the chance to, do some fighting? And so finally you have all this anticipation or whatever, and the day comes when you do some sparring. When you get into the kind of ring. And the first thing you notice when you get into the ring, when you do the sparring, is that all the techniques you learned tend to fly out the window. All of a sudden you're there and you can't think, okay, I blocked, now I should step forward with my right foot and punch. You have a real life opponent who's gauging your movements, and if you telegraph them, he or she will counter. And you'll end up getting a hit, So what you learn is that you have to improvise quite a lot. You have these kind of forms, you have these patterns as a basis, but once you go into actual combat, most of it is improvisation. Of course you have these things as the base. You still punch with your arm, not with your foot, You still punch forward and not backwards. You still lead with your hips. But your blocks tend to become very fast, like this. A lot of your movements are just very close to your body. And it's the same way with developing a skill in meditation, a skill with taking on wholesome states of becoming. At first, we learn these forms, We learn these kind of things, going through the body, relaxing the various parts of the body, learning to breathe in a way that's comfortable, learning to breathe continuously and mindfully. But then when we step out of meditation, after we do this for a while, we start using these techniques to try to find a way to counter the actual bad qualities that arise in our life. How do we use these techniques on breathing to counter anger? How do we use them to counter anxiety? And this is when we learn about the cause and effect role in our meditation. When we're outside there, when we have anxiety, we breathe in a particular way. How do we calm that breath? When we calm the breath, does it affect the mood? Right there, we learn a lot about the way that the body and the mind interact. When we're angry, how do we breathe? How do we stop breathing in that way, bring our breath back to a more calm state? When we're pulled off and distracted, how do we watch the breath in a way that we don't get pulled off? What is it that's usually pulling our attention away? So in all these ways, we learn to develop meditation as a skill. It becomes something that starts with a base, starts with a technique, starts with something we do in the meditation hall, and then leaves the meditation hall into our life. It becomes something like we use all the time. Because the qualities of mind, the types of mental development that we have that are negative, they don't just go away when we exit the door, right? These are things that are affecting us all the time. The things that make us happy, the things that make us sad, they don't just stay in the meditation hall when our eyes are closed. They're there all the time. So for this reason, we come to meditation, we learn the techniques, we learn the bases, but then these are things that we learn to do intuitively, on our own. In other words, they're a skill that we develop, a type of becoming that we develop that's based on training the mind. We learn to take on a state of becoming in training the mind, becoming a person who's a meditator, becoming a person who enjoys the process of developing wholesome qualities. And this is a bit like somebody who's gone through the forms. When we go through the forms, we start sparring. We learn to enjoy the process of developing this skill. Enjoy the process of doing the drills. And then we learn to improvise when the time comes for us to be in actual combat. What is it that's going to stop this opponent? And then every opponent you face tends to be different, Some of them, once you fight them for a while, you get to know the way that they move, and you get to see what they're going to do when they telegraph. But every new person you face has a whole new set of capabilities. And this is the same way with the defilements that come up in our mind. We start with the grosser ones, the very bad, obvious, coarse portions of anger, of greed, of delusion, things that are very obvious, We start trying to use our meditation techniques to counter these. And eventually, through diligence, we get some success. But then the thing is, more subtle ones come up, and they have a whole new slew of different moves, a whole new slew of different techniques. So then we have to become equally versatile, equally skilled. In this way, our skills in meditation start from something basic, start from something like watching the breath, going through forms, and they develop. They develop to the point where we actually start to eliminate the unwholesome qualities that pull us down in life. Start to eliminate the coarse, bad behaviors in our life that are causing us to suffer. And they move forward from that. They move forward to increasing levels of skill where we actually learn to develop happiness from our meditation itself. But this is something that comes eventually, after we practice with time, after we learn to make meditation the basis of our way we interact with the world, make development of wholesome qualities the basis of the way we interact with the world. So in this way, meditation starts from something small. Starts from just coming to a temple or wherever it is, learning the forms, learning to watch our breath, learning to practice goodwill. When we become skilled at those forms, we leave and we learn to spar a bit. We learn how to throw punches. We learn how to go into actual kind of combat with the defilements that are out there in our life. We become skilled enough, we see that we knock some of these down, we get a little bit of peace, and that leads us on further. And this is why the Buddhist teachings are said to be opanayiko, leading onwards. It leads from one set of skills to another, to another, to another. And at the end of these set of skills, there is a goal to all this. The goal is to try to completely overcome the things that cause us to suffer. This idea that it's possible to find a happiness that's unshakable and that doesn't change with conditions. But that's at the end. That's like getting a 10th degree black belt. But if we're first starting, then we have this attitude, okay, I'm coming into a class with a white belt. I'm going to learn the structures that are important. I'm going to learn the forms that are important. I'm going to learn the techniques that are important, and it's all for the sake of developing this skill, a skill that results in happiness.